Happy autumn, Field Guides listeners. The calendar may say October, but we're going back in time to August for part 2 of our summer hike with entomologist extraordinaire Jason Dombroskie and our coverage of the insect apocalypse. If you haven't checked out part 1, that's when we hiked around, found some insects, and mostly just had fun learning about what we found. We think it's definitely worth checking out. But in this second part, we're going to shift gears and focus completely on the insect apocalypse, what the research around it says, and most importantly, what you can do about it. Jason and Steve also spend some time bonding over a shared love of weed whackers while I stand awkwardly by. So let's get back out on the trail.
So
enjoy.
Some species can really throw a wrench into things.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
So in terms of the insect apocalypse, have we really talked about the drivers of what's driving insect declines?
So there's a bunch of things, and a lot of the papers point to pesticides as being a very important one. But the key thing is that it's all dependent on the system and the species. There's so many different factors. In fact, one of the best review papers written recently by Wagner et al. Called it a death by 1,000 cuts. There's so many factors working against insects that are causing this decline. So one of the big ones, of course, is pesticides, which we need to control problem insects like diamondback moth. And, pesticides drift. I was reading about a study that looked at plant bugs on sort of the hedgerows next to crops that are sprayed. And some of the plant bugs, the non-target insects, it kills like 93%, 94% of them. And, that's a problem because those are species that are not problematic. They're on the hedgerow, they're food for other things, but they're getting hit by this pesticide drift. The other thing is, especially in upstate New York, where you have a lot of tile drainage, those pesticides get into the soil and then drain right off into the rivers where they have different effects on aquatic insects and often at very acute levels. So going back to Illinois that you mentioned, they've got a lot of great long data sets going back through history. One of them is stoneflies.
Oh. And
stoneflies are the order Plecoptera, which they're important aquatic insects in lotic habitats, in very cold flowing water, highly oxygenated water. And they have a variety of different roles there, from predators to shredders to, detritivores, things like that. Very important trout food, so often a good sign of a healthy stream. In Illinois, I should pull up the actual numbers here. It's amazing, the decline there. The numbers are 29% of the 77 local stonefly species were lost.
Whoa. And
62% of the remainder became threatened over the past century.
And you're saying sometimes insects are so endemic in certain areas. Do you think that these are just extirpated populations, or do you think these are species that are gone?
At least, I think it was 2 of the species in Illinois were restricted to Illinois.
Wow.
And they're gone. There's a few in New York, actually just a few days ago, a checklist of the Plecoptera, the stoneflies of New York, came out. And now, New York's had sort of the opposite agricultural history of Illinois, where Illinois went from forest to intensive agriculture, where we went from fairly intensive agriculture back to reforestation in a lot of cases. So our stoneflies are actually doing pretty well, except in some places like downstate. Yeah. But up here, like at my place, I've got a very healthy stonefly population in my stream. So
cool.
And places like the Adirondacks and Catskills and Tug Hill, you get a lot of good stonefly diversity. But yeah, that long-term data set in Illinois is just really useful for documenting that change. And we don't have that for New York, just casual collecting here and there.
So besides pesticides, what's one of the other 1,000 cuts?
So 1,000 cuts. Well, so
999 cuts left
are absolutely huge, but as are things like fungicides and herbicides. So fungicides, while they might not have an acutely toxic effect, they can have sublethal effects. So some of the fungicides have been tied to bees being less active or things like that. Some of the herbicides, if they're drifting off of those fields, they're killing the plant biodiversity.
Right.
And that drives the insect biodiversity.
Right.
And so you're having just things that are resistant to that herbicide growing there. And so any of these sort of chemicals meant to deal with pests can be problematic. And some of it is just improper application. We have to be careful. You don't spray on a windy day. You don't spray right before a rain kind of deal. And a lot of our computer models are helping define when's best to efficiently spray. But the other thing that's driving this is invasive species. So a recent invasive species that showed up in New York, in North America, is spot-winged Drosophila, which looks just like the standard fruit fly, but it's got a spot in the end of the wing in the male, pretty distinctive. And they feed on live fruits, though, which is problematic. I just ate a spot-winged Drosophila there. Something delicious. But these have very rapid development, which means we have to spray small fruits, so things like berries, have to be sprayed much more frequently to try to control that. If you don't, you get maggoty berries. And so we're now getting close to a threshold where growing organic berries in New York State is not feasible anymore.
I didn't know about this one either. I don't know about any of these, actually.
No, me either.
It's bad. And as a side note, another invasive fruit fly, European tray fruit fly, has showed up in New York that has one cycle per year. So it's what we call univoltine. Now, fortunately, because we're already spraying for spot-wing Drosophila, it kind of already takes care of that other invasive species. But yeah, invasive species really throw a wrench in the thing. And the other thing that, I don't know if I'm quoting someone here, I think I might have come up with this, but I like to describe agriculture as, nature abhors a monoculture.
Right.
When you create a monoculture, you're asking for disaster. And so there are natural monocultures in parts of the globe, like krill in Antarctica. And, well, I guess that's not monoculture because it's not a plant, but krill, they're pretty much plants. They're food for whales. But getting to northern Canada, you get essentially monocultures of things like trembling aspen or black spruce or white spruce. And those are often taken out by insect outbreaks, native insects for the most part. But yeah, you get those big cycles, which then knock back the dominant species, so the less dominant species can compete and increase that diversity again.
And I'm sure they grow in perfect rows, too, when they're natural.
What's interesting with, it's funny you mentioned that, there's this phenomenon in balsam fir. Balsam fir grows into these dense, impenetrable stands that are really shady, and only balsam fir grows underneath it, and depend on spruce budworm to eat those and allow other species to grow up. But what's interesting is they suffer from something, I'm not joking here, it's called butt rot. Any forester won't laugh at that because they know what butt rot is. It's basically a fungal rot in the base of the tree.
It's not a laughing matter.
But what happens is you get a bunch of the trees knocked down, and then wind keeps knocking more and more trees down. So you get these serpentine, these snake-like lines of trees getting knocked down. And it creates these patterns you can see from space in balsam fir monoculture.
That's cool.
All right, so we have pesticides, herbicides, fungicides, invasive species.
We have a lot of other ones.
Climate change has got to be one of them.
Oh,
climate change is a big one.
Yeah.
So we've already alluded to that. Now, climate change is a double-edged sword. So right now, going back to my light where I know my fauna well, there are species at my light that are common now that were not in New York State 10 years ago. Things are moving north, and that's true with a lot of insect species. But it also means things that were on the southern end of the range are moving north as well. So things have disappeared. Things that they collected quite commonly in good numbers back in the early 1900s, I can't find now. You've got to go either way far north or higher up in elevation. Now, here, things have places they can go. They can go move north to escape the heat. But if you look at something like butterfly biodiversity, the peak butterfly biodiversity, there's a study just came out, I think last year or this year, that looked at these hot spots where butterflies are most diverse, and they're all high elevation tropical places.
Oh no.
And there you can't go north, you go up. And eventually you run out of mountain and you wink out. And so a lot of our butterfly diversity, I think it was like 62%, are expected to be basically wiped out by, I think, 2070 they're suggesting. And so it's amazing how bad it's going to be for
so climate change is causing these high elevation refugia to be less
refugial.
They're just not hospitable to them anymore.
Yeah, it's disappearing.
Wow.
Yeah. And
that's not just in insects too. I mean, we see that in plant species and in mammal species, and
And the other thing with climate change is extreme weather events.
Yes.
And so if I give you an example outside of extreme weather, for something like caterpillars, you can have 99% of a population wiped out if they hatch on the wrong day where you get heavy rain or a hard frost, or if they emerge before the leaves emerge. That can wipe out a population. Now, if you're on a tiny island, they wink out. If you're a big forest, okay, something's going to survive. But with extreme events, things like hurricanes are deadly for certain insects. So especially in butterfly conservation, they're like, okay, we're down to these three populations. A hurricane's coming.
Oh God!
Right.
And then now you could have either just a flush of the sea rise and flood it with salt water, wipe things out there. You could have just the amount of water. The wind could physically blow the butterflies away if it's the wrong time of year. So hurricanes can be dreadful. There was a study done in Puerto Rico that looked in the rainforest there, And there was reported biomass losses between 98% and 78% for ground foraging and canopy-dwelling arthropods.
Can you say that percentage again?
Was 98%
Oh my
and
God.
78%
Holy moly.
for ground foraging and canopy-dwelling arthropods over a 36-year period, and associated parallel decline in birds, frogs, and lizards. Now, what's interesting is this is one of the first studies that really set off the alarm bells, and they tied it to increase in temperature and things disappearing. But actually, a later study reanalyzed the data and thought, actually, it's probably due to a hurricane that wiped thing out, because it did an early census and a later census, and a hurricane had come through in between. And the hurricane is probably the real reason that you had that dramatic decline. So again, with climate change, though, the ultimate cause is the same. It's climate change. Hurricanes are becoming more frequent and more powerful.
Right. With more heat and more energy in the system, you get more extreme weather events. I also heard, like, even during, like, winters, or certain areas anyway, you should expect more, like, freeze-thaw cycles. So it's less a consistent snowpack and everything like that. A lot of those changes, and we've done episodes, like, on the subnivean layer and things like that, where, you know, a lot of that stuff is super important for a lot of survival over the winter. So,
well, it's funny you mentioned subnivean layer. Subnivean layer.
Yeah.
What's interesting is if you go under the snow in winter, there's active spiders, there's active insects moving around there. As long as you've got that insulating layer of snow, all winter there's stuff active there. It's less in the summer, but still, there's stuff there. There was a study done at Hubbard Brook Research Forest in New Hampshire, a place that's pretty been well studied for insects. They did censuses of beetles, and they had massive declines in beetle numbers there in the past, I think, 30 years.
Wow.
And they tied it to species that spend their time on the ground over the winter, and that the snowpack is less, and they noticed the decline very dramatically after snowless winters.
Wow.
And so, yes, it's warmer, but the conditions are worse for overwintering.
Because they evolved to have specific conditions. Yeah.
And so I wonder,
we had a snowless winter, 2011 to 2012.
I remember that.
That was
I moved to the US that year.
That was a weird winter, and it almost, like, it was sort of nice, but it also felt very wrong. You know, that was probably the peak of my, like, environmental, like,
awareness.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Well, even late this past winter, so January, February, March, we didn't get much snow. There was very little on the ground, at least in the Ithaca area. And I was wondering the whole time, like, what am I losing? You know, what's dying out here with these warm conditions?
See, and it was different in our neck of the woods, because we had almost constant snow cover.
Oh, yes.
It wasn't super deep, but it was probably deep enough for a subnivean layer, I would think. It was at least 18 inches for a lot of the winter.
We live in the Buffalo area. I'm like just south of the lake, and we get destroyed in Hamburg.
Orchard Park area?
I'm in Hamburg, and then my parents live up in East Amherst, and they get nothing. In fact, like, that's where I also work very close to East Amherst. They get nothing. So on days I'm like, I got to work remote today, and they're like, the weather's beautiful out here. Like, I know, but I'm 30 minutes southwest. You know? Yeah.
So to go off of what you're saying, and kind of what we're talking about now, when we talk about plants, how a lot of mammals and birds deal with climate change, is it the same with insects, where with the changes we see wrought by climate change, is it the generalists, those kind of highly adaptable species that are going to do well because they are a little more plastic in what they can eat or where they can go, as opposed to those specialists that are going to see declines or wink out because they're not as adaptable?
That's been the general finding with most studies.
Yeah.
It's the things that are specialists on certain host plants or specific habitats, they tend to wink out fast. And the generalists, especially a lot of the invasive species that are highly adaptable, they tend to do just fine. But what we're finding now is, now that we're starting to look at common species versus rare species in things like butterflies, the common species in some places like the American Midwest are showing the most dramatic declines, more so than the rare species. And you wouldn't know that because they're still common. But the trend is worrying, because, again, the common things are driving the system, because they're the bulk of the biomass.
So many things depend on them.
And so when you're losing that much biomass, bad things are going to happen. You know, and back to climate change, the other one is long-term effects, things like multi-year droughts. So the American Southwest, so I was just in Arizona a few weeks ago, and they're in a multi-year drought in parts of the state. And they're noticing big declines in insects. Now, anecdotally, we don't have really good data to support it. Will they come back after the drought's over? Who knows? You know, Desert things might be adapted to it, but things that aren't desert adapted, maybe not so much. And so these multi-year droughts are just potentially going to really devastate things. And you get to a place like the tropics, like in South India, where they're hitting 40, 50 degrees Celsius for several days. That's, I don't know what that is in Fahrenheit, but that's hot and humid. You know, humans can't live in that unless you have air conditioning.
Yeah.
Well, wildlife really can't either. So it's just, we're going to basically depopulate the tropics and push things towards the poles.
One of the things I saw is that some of the meta studies that kind of group studies together and to look at the quote-unquote insect apocalypse is that a lot of the changes they were seeing were attributed, and declines they were seeing were attributed to climate change independent of land use changes. So, because, you know, people talk about, oh, we need to plant more milkweed and, you know, we need to plant stuff in our backyards. But, you know, even independent of that, just these long-term climate change alterations to our systems, that's driving a lot of declines.
Yeah, in some cases we just can't put our finger on what's causing it. It just doesn't seem to make sense. Now, I should also mention at this point, not all studies are showing an insect decline.
Right.
You know, insects are not declining everywhere. There are places where insects are improving number. And anecdotally, I can tell you, in my backyard, I've turned a hayfield into this nice, rich meadow in 5 years, and the fireflies are doing fantastic there.
Oh, yeah.
Now, across North America, they're not. You know, but you can find local areas where insects are doing great. And even I talked about in the tropics where insects are declining dramatically. Places like Ecuador are not seeing that decline in some studies down there. So it's not universal, but the trend is that overall insects are declining. But there are a few studies that are showing, okay, it might not be as bad as we think, but it probably is.
Yeah.
When
and it's
we
probably
say-
context dependent too,
Yes.
right?
This whole time that we've been talking about declines, have we been careful to talk about overall biomass decline, or is it species diversity decline,
Both.
or is it...
Well, there's three things.
Yeah, okay.
So the first two you mentioned. The third one is shifting distribution. So shrinking distribution versus a distribution moving in a direction.
Okay.
So what you're finding is some species, especially in North America, they're moving north as the
Right.
climate gets hotter. But you again, you can't obviously do that if you're in the mountains. You go up and eventually you wink
Right.
out. But in places like Europe, they're finding it's just distributions are shrinking. They're just not moving as far north. They're just decreasing. So you get the decrease in biomass, in biodiversity, and species richness as well, which is different, and also in geographic distribution.
And one of the things that I came across in the limited research that I did, and if you could speak to this a little more, that'd be great, is that in areas where they are seeing some increases or steady populations, some of that is due to conservation efforts, where things that people are doing to help water quality or land use, to minimize impacts from land use changes, that those are having an effect on insect populations.
Absolutely. And so there was another a meta-study done where it showed that of the studies they looked at, terrestrial insect biomass is declining 10% a decade, which is ridiculous.
That's scary.
And this is overall. Like this isn't just cherry-picking studies. This is the positives and negatives. It's bad. But that same study found that aquatic insects are increasing biomass by 10% a decade. And that goes to what you're doing. You know, we used to treat rivers as our dumping grounds.
Right.
Well, some people still do. I live near a trailer park, so I know. But
The solution to pollution is dilution, right?
Send it off to the ocean.
That was the old saying. Yeah.
We've been dramatically improving that. You know, we've cut back on acid rain can negatively affect certain insects, especially the environments they live in, especially in certain acidic soils.
We brought up the Adirondacks earlier. Wasn't that a big issue? The acidity
absolutely.
of the lakes.
Which actually, that benefited some insects because it got rid of the fish. So fishless lakes actually have their whole own insect fauna. There's certain damselflies you only get in fishless lakes. And actually, going back to the Bat Lake Trail Guide, it surrounds Bat Lake, which has no fish. And there was a damselfly there that's only found in fishless lakes. So. And it's always fun watching people hike into Bat Lake with their fishing gear. I'm like, you should read the trail guide. Good luck. There's no fish in there. And it's also full of salamanders.
Oh, cool.
Because there's really no competition.
Why are there no fish in Bat Lake?
It's too acidic. It's all bog lined.
Gotcha. Okay.
And it probably was always fishless.
So maybe if we get rid of all the fish in Lake Erie.
The insects will just...
Yeah.
Well, and that's another thing. You look at Lake Erie where they had zebra mussels introduced.
Yeah, right.
And they filtered out all this material, cleaned out all these pollutants, and cleared up the water. Well, all these filter-feeding insects now had no food.
Right. Yeah. I was gonna say you weren't always able to look as deep into Lake Erie as you could. It's like the most shallow lake, the most biodiverse. It's the warmest. Yeah.
You shouldn't be able to see as deep as you can.
It has its problems. Yeah.
It's always complicated. When you're dealing with this many species, something's going to benefit, something's going to lose. And right now, the balance seems to be on the losing end of things.
Just like with birds, just like with a lot of things, right? Yeah.
I planted a milkweed once, so I think I
You did your
turn
part.
things around.
Well, and so that's great, and I want to encourage people to do things like that as almost pointless as it probably was, because there is lots of milkweed around here. Right. We just don't have many monarchs. This year's been at least in upstate New York. I just started seeing monarchs a few weeks ago.
Oh, cool.
They were very sparse early this year in their return migration. I don't know how they're doing elsewhere, but...
Now tell us exactly why that is, Jason.
Well, I'll take my Nobel biology prize.
Yeah.
Do they have Nobel biology prize? No, I don't know. I wasn't following, so I don't know what their winter population was like, but the winter can really drive their population downwards. But being insects, they can be really resilient and bounce back pretty quickly. So right now I am seeing the occasional monarch, but earlier this year I really wasn't. Now, but going back to your comment about planting milkweed, that's not the limiting factor here. It's not milkweed in New York State.
Sure, yeah,
but
there's a lot of it.
In the Midwest, which is the heart of monarch country, there is milkweed, but it's covered in pesticides because it's largely agriculture there. So this intensive agriculture is not friendly to monarch habitat. And then also another pinch point is where they winter. It's just this one mountainous area in Mexico where they're all congregated. And if you get a bad winter with some really hard frosts or heavy snows, that can really knock down the population.
I think I just read about the decreasing populations of monarchs specifically in Mexico. So
yeah,
but and the other thing is too, planting a milkweed. It's not pointless, but you have to think of it as an ecosystem. That milkweed is going to support leaf miner flies. It's going to support large milkweed bugs, small milkweed bugs. There's going to be dogbane leaf beetles that visit it. There's all kinds of insects that visit the flowers. There's milkweed longhorn beetles. There's all these other insects that can now benefit from you planting that one milkweed instead of like a hosta or something.
Right, and I know when I was in Illinois, some people are starting to get a little annoyed. At least some small group of people were like, we have a lot of milkweed. It's like, let's not just plant common milkweed, like
right,
Asclepias syriaca or whatever. Like we got so many in Illinois. Let's start planting a bunch of them.
Get some diversity going.
Yeah.
But I used to, back when I was more on social media, which I'm avoiding at the plague now for various reasons, I would get into fights with these people that were very well-meaning. They wanted to protect the monarchs. They had milkweed, and all they wanted to know was what to spray in their milkweed to get rid of those other insects that are eating their milkweed. It's like, no, just leave them. They'll be fine.
That's racist.
Yeah. Speciesist.
Yeah.
Is this a good spot to talk about things that people can do or solutions? Right.
Yeah, so there are things you practically can do. One of the things I always recommend doing, this comes from a lot of the studies done by Doug Tallamy. He's got a lot of great papers out there.
Popular guy, Doug Tallamy.
Oh, yeah. It's funny because I'll be driving somewhere, I'll be doing a long road trip, and I'll be thinking, I wonder if that affects insect populations. And I'll pull over and check some of the references. Of course, Tallamy thought of it 10 years ago and it's published on it.
Right.
So he seems to be like way ahead of the curve on insect decline and
by the way,
species.
We have a friend that he had a book signing in Buffalo maybe like 13 years ago, and I had a friend that kind of asked him about his lab, and he was basically like, no, not you. Yeah, it was just like, I imagine he's a pretty.
It was you, Steve, wasn't it?
It wasn't me. No, I don't have the. What would it be? The gall.
Nice. So for the audience, check out Doug Tallamy's books. We'll link those in the episode notes.
What's the super popular one? Native
Bringing nature home or something like that. Yeah. About native plants in your backyard. And this is for our local audience. He is going to be speaking at UB.
Oh, really?
This year. He's one of their speakers.
And my anecdote, I didn't mean to make him sound like a jerk. It was just a funny, I just know someone that kind of queried him about his lab stuff, and he's just like...
You got to be selective.
Yeah, you got to be,
You can't just take anybody in.
Yeah.
So, one of the key things I always tell people is shrink your lawn. You don't have to get rid of it. I have a lawn. It's 10% of what it used to be, but shrink it, because what's the point of having this bare patch of grass that almost nothing lives in to just look at?
It's green asphalt.
Exactly. It's green asphalt. It's very poor in biodiversity. It's a waste of your time. It's a waste of your money and gasoline or electricity to mow it. Just leave it be. Just let it go. And I challenge people, like, find a corner of your lawn, just a small corner, just let it go and see what happens. And if you're near some nature, you'll have nice things come up. If you're not, okay, you might have to put a bit of work into it. But anything is better than a lawn. Lawns are just awful things. But you don't have to get rid of your lawn. Like, I do have a lawn, but, shrink it. It's really not that important.
You could do your fancy exotic garden right near your house, but then do a native garden in the lawn. Yeah. Or maybe they could both be native gardens, but
Yeah, you can even mix them in. But and just a stat that I like here is how prevalent lawns are in North America. It's 40 million acres.
Wow.
I think the stat is that it's equal in size or greater than all the national parks, something like that.
That's so depressing.
And for what? It's okay, if you play lots of soccer or football, great, have a lawn. But if you got these acres and acres of grass with scattered trees, there's no point. Shrink some of that.
Before the episode, Bill was saying how he loves cutting his grass and that it's like meditation to him.
No. That was you.
Oh.
And hey, I'll admit to that too. I do enjoy cutting my lawn, but my lawn.
Do you think is it a dad thing, or is it just I don't know what is so enjoyable about it?
It's just I got the anal retentiveness where I can go a nice straight line.
Oh yeah, the weed whacking, man. More than ever before am I addicted to it.
Well, I didn't get a weed whacker. I got, instead of the string attachment, the blade attachment, a really dangerous one. It's great for multi-floor rows.
The metal one?
Yeah.
I've been seeing ads for that.
Oh, it's fantastic.
We'll do another episode on this.
On weed whackers. So I don't know if you're gonna mention this, but I want to give it a shout out again to In Defense of Plants and our friend Matt. He had a researcher on that looked at the impacts of leaving leaves on your lawn, and he looked specifically at insects and did a study in a suburban neighborhood over a couple years, and it was amazing the diversity increases of just leaving the leaves there and how it was in many cases beneficial for the lawn.
Yeah, and I remember listening to that episode and thinking, oh, this is great, this is fantastic work.
My parents yelled at me for keeping all the leaves on my lawn. They're like, it's going to kill the grass. I was like, it's going to be fine. Turned out to be perfectly fine. I'm never raking a leaf ever again.
It's like, why take all those nutrients from your lawn to just have to fertilize your lawn again?
Right.
It's
what
pointless.
if you lawnmowered it? Something I also didn't do. But like early in the season, you can't help but you get a little bit. But I don't have a bag on my lawnmower, so everything just stays there. I think probably the best is not doing anything, right? But I'm sure shredding it can't be horrible. But
well, it's
nothing
still
to hide
there in
underneath,
large scale, so
yeah.
there's still hiding places. It's a place to hide. That's the key thing for nature.
Yeah, right.
A ugly brush pile is a great hiding spot for something like a rabbit, even like an eastern cottontail can easily hide there. A fox, even.
I have a fire pit in the middle of my backyard. And it's just had a pile of sticks in it for 2 years now. We haven't started a single fire in it. But all the birds are always perching there, and we see, I don't know, I think it's its own little environment at this point.
The next thing I'd suggest is native plants. Use native plants whenever possible. When you think of biomass, again, Doug Talmy did more work on what supports more insects and, in the end, birds and things like that. Native plants versus non-native, and of course it's native plants. If you have a sugar maple tree in your backyard, you've got several hundred species of just moths that are going to be feeding on that. That's food for the birds that are living there, food for the mammals living there, and also lots of other insects feeding on those. If you have a Norway maple, there's 2 species that eat that.
Wow,
both non-native, and they're all both very small and probably feeding nothing. And so now all of a sudden you've shrunk that available biomass for insects, which shrunk that available biomass for birds. And so do you expect to see many birds in a neighborhood that's full of things like Norway maple or tree heaven or other non-native species like that? It really makes a difference. A lot of people in the Ithaca area plant forsythia because deer don't eat it. And it's one of the few things deer don't eat. Nothing eats it. You might as well put a plastic plant there.
Right.
That's just as good. Native plants, very, very important. Reduce pesticide use, that's a no-brainer. There's a time and place for pesticides. Absolutely. They are needed, especially in agricultural systems, and you just can't do it all natural ways. So try to limit it. Do you need to spray pesticides on your lawn if there's some brown patches? Probably not. Maybe you can see, is it just some sod webworm? Okay, well, that'll go away once you get some good rains and whatnot. Or the other thing is nitrification. That can be a huge thing. I didn't talk about that as a big cause of insect decline, but nitrification. So fertilizing your lawn is not very good because a lot of the insects that are declining are adapted to low nutrient environments. And low nutrient environments have their own plant fauna. And when they get spillover from nitrogen from agricultural fields, the plant fauna changes. You get all these invasives or sometimes native plants that are adapted to richer soils that take over. And that totally changes the plants, it totally changes the insects. So a lot of those species are declining. So
it's common in wetlands too, where when you get a high nitrogen, entering that environment, it's like you tend to you lose species diversity, you gain biomass overall, but it's a lot of the same stuff.
You probably get eutrophication from that, right? Or is it phosphates that do that?
I think it's both.
Okay.
Yes, because we talk about that in the Mississippi River.
And related to pollution like pesticides and things like that, light pollution. Lights can have negative effects on insects, and we've developed LEDs that don't attract insects as much. However, the evidence that they actually make a difference is pretty nil. In fact, there was one study that showed that caterpillar predation went up because predators can see their prey at night still. The moths aren't coming to the light, and so turn off unnecessary lights. Now, lights, yes, they're important for safety reasons and whatnot, and airports and things like that, street lights.
But there's plenty of lights out there.
There are lots, and there's many reasons not to run lights, let alone the waste of electricity. But attracting bird strikes in cities and things like that. Like, just turn off unnecessary lights. Like, it's disturbing when you walk by a city block and you see all these lights on at night. It's like, I don't think there's people up there. That's a waste of energy.
I read a pretty cool book on light pollution. And I don't know if I remember the author, but it's The End of Night, maybe by Paul Beauregard or something like that. Super interesting book, and the way he has it set up is chapter 1, he's in a sky that's like a 10, like it's like the brightest the sky could be at night. And then every chapter he's in a 9, then an 8, then a 7, then a 6, and he covers a different topic of light pollution in each one. And he does talk about its effects on insects, but also its effects on just safety in general, and does it actually help you see better, or is it making the shadows even that much darker and harder to see? It was a pretty cool book, but I recommend it to anyone.
We'll put that in the links.
It's a cool one, yeah.
Yeah, and on that note, I study moths, so I use a light all the time, but in the morning... Yeah, I know. I also kill a lot of insects, but I can get to that on purpose. But with my light, before the catbirds wake up, I give that sheet a really good shake to shake everything loose so that the catbirds don't have an easy time to pick off everything.
Oh, didn't even think about that, not just leaving all of them there.
Yeah, no, because otherwise catbirds have their way at it.
Right.
Sometimes they're up a little too early, and I get very grumpy with them. I touched a catbird this year, not in a friendly way, but there's one that just does not care about my presence, if I'm there or not.
Really?
The blue jays at least will keep their distance, but this catbird, it's the bane of my existence.
It's funny because bird banding at Beaver Meadow, we've been doing it for 20 years. The catbird is by far the species we catch the most. So we've handled many, 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 many catbirds.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is, the catbirds, they first go for tiger moths, which are the toxic ones usually. So they like these toxic insects, and they pick those off. And when they pick the moths off, they shake the sheet, so all these other things fly off, and I'm trying to count. And so the catbirds, I don't have a friendly relationship with catbirds. So in addition, adjust your diet. And think about that. How could you adjust your diet to save insects?
Well, one thing that I would say, and maybe it's not a popular opinion, but I do know that land and resource use go down the less meat you have in your diet.
Absolutely. That's one big thing right there.
Yes.
By a crazy amount. I remember we read a paper where the paper was actually focusing on the highest population that the U.S. could support given different dietary choices, like if everyone had one diet or everyone had another and everyone had another. And they found that what effectively was a vegan diet was almost the top one, but actually if you used a lot of the land that can't be used, you had to increase the amount of land use by a ton for grazing and stuff, and that actually led to a slightly higher total population that could be sustained in America. You had to add a lot of land to get just a little increase. So
Yeah, I was looking at a graphic this morning, and it was how much land would you need for everyone on Earth to live our lifestyle in the U.S.?
We need 5 Earths, wouldn't we? Something
Four.
Oh my gosh!
If you were from the UAE, United Arab Emirates, it's 5.
Okay.
We're not the worst.
They're a much smaller country too.
Yeah.
Bangladesh, if everybody lived Bangladeshi levels, it'd be just a small chunk of Asia that you'd need.
Wow.
So we are resource hogs here. Mm-hmm. And when you think about it, like, I'm not encouraging everybody to become vegetarian. I'm not. But I have reduced my meat intake dramatically. Right. You know, I have beef mostly just when I travel. I can't think of the last time I bought beef at the grocery store. If you like beef, eat it, but you don't have to eat it every meal. You know, and beef is one of the worst ones for carbon output, resource input, land usage, and also includes dairy.
We did a whole episode on eating less meat way early on.
Yeah.
And we kind of set out trying to disprove the idea that it has a significant impact. And we couldn't find anything that strongly refuted the idea that the less animal products you have in your diet, the lower your footprint is. And I want to say, because I was thinking about this on my way to pick you up, I just listened to an episode of Skeptoid that talked about carbon footprint and the beef industry, and methane. And at the end, I'd be interested to hear what you guys think, because he did ask the question, does going vegan, is it worth it? And he kind of landed on the idea that people are not going to change their diet in a significant enough way to have a significant impact. So instead, we need to push for regulation, carbon tax, things like that, and voting in people that will encourage reduction in carbon use. But he didn't touch on land use at all. And to my mind, you talk about, death by 1,000 cuts. That works for these kind of problems too, in my mind. Like, we do need to encourage people to do this. We don't need everyone to go vegan, but to be aware, to reduce their impact if they can, and in ways that they can. That's going to have an impact as well. Because you could also say, well, what's the point of driving an electric car then? Because you as one person, no, you're not going to have much of an impact, so what's the point? But in our vegan episode we found one study that found just cutting out beef, I think, 2 or 3 days of the week.
Oh, it was crazy.
Would have more of an impact than driving the most environmentally friendly electric car.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And one of the arguments for beef is that, okay, if you have them free range, open pasture, that's still habitat for wildlife. But remember, that biomass is now going to beef instead of something like bison.
Right.
So you're just, okay, there's some wildlife there, but it would be better if you had a much smaller soybean field somewhere else.
Right.
Instead of this massive pasture to grow a few cows.
Right.
And sort of tied into that, one of the best ways to save insects, I'd argue, is eating them.
Yeah.
And that's entomophagy.
That's a hard sell for a lot of people.
Oh, you know what, though? Because for so long, you hear, why grow food to then feed the cows to then eat the cows instead of just growing the food to eat the food? But this is just eat. So not even that argument anymore. Eat the insects.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And now if you compare per gram of protein, crickets to cattle, per gram of protein, it takes 1/12 of feed for cricket protein. So that's less unit area there right away. Yeah. Water usage for crickets, 0.8 gallons per gram of protein versus 15.8 gallons for cattle.
Wow.
And then for how much of the animal you actually eat, crickets is 80%. Cattle, what do you think?
Oh.
40%.
Yeah, 40%.
Wow.
Yes.
Good guess.
Total guess.
Yeah.
So it's just a no-brainer.
What do they remove?
From cattle?
No, from the grasshopper.
From crickets, I think it would be the legs would be, because a lot of people don't like the legs.
Okay. I've never had one before. So
have you eaten crickets?
I have. Yes,
Yeah.
I've had cricket flour. I've had cricket cookies.
Whoa.
I've had fresh crickets just straight from the ground.
I think if they were ground into something where I wasn't seeing a lot of insect parts, I'd be much more open to it. And I'm not saying I'm not open to it, but just the idea of eating something that looks like an animal, I don't love. I personally don't eat animals, but I'm not saying I wouldn't. if I don't know. Like
It would
maybe
be so good if you had brought some crickets.
you should have brought a cricket. You should have brought a cricket cookie for us.
Well, we could find some.
Okay.
We're flexible. We would
Yeah,
eat
sure.
a cricket cookie for
So,
sure.
so admittedly, I've eaten over 200 species of insects. Now, this isn't for entomophic reasons. It's curiosity to see how toxic things are. Because, like, how else are you going to find out? Besides having...
Self-experimentation.
Yeah. So I've eaten some bad insects.
How many micro moths have you eaten?
I think none, because
Zero,
they're my soft spot.
Oh, I see. It'd be like eating a puppy or something.
But yeah, no, there's good tasting insects out there. I don't advise people doing it in case they're allergic.
Right.
But poison's in the dose, so it'll taste bad. Like stink bugs smell bad, but they taste way worse, and that's taste safe for hours.
I love this. I love this idea of a future where you're at the doctor's office and they're like, you did end up testing positive for being allergic to that little moth that looks like bird shit. if you see something that looks like bird shit, don't eat it.
Well, yeah, people with seafood allergies probably should stay away from insects because it's
Oh.
similar chemicals in the chitin. Yeah.
Oh.
Interesting.
So just be cautious, Well, actually, on that note, I have what's called OAS, oral allergy syndrome.
Oh,
which
mouth
is
gets itchy.
yes,
Yeah.
that's it.
What did you say?
Mouth gets itchy.
Oh.
When you eat certain things, right?
Raw bananas, watermelon, cantaloupe, all are symptoms of being allergic to ragweed pollen.
Really?
And so those your
AKA
brain, your body
goldenrod.
confuses them. Yeah. Don't get me started on that. You're not allergic to goldenrod.
You can't eat watermelon?
Not raw.
Wow.
A banana's the worst one.
So you can eat watermelon cooked?
Steak? I've seen a watermelon steak.
Okay, I've never cooked watermelon, but cooked banana, like in a banana muffin or
Ooh.
something, it doesn't bother me. And it's the
Interesting.
proteins in it that get denatured in the
Really?
cooking. But a raw banana causes my throat to get really scratchy and irritated.
Really?
It's not anaphylaxis or anything like that, but
Yeah.
it's not pleasant.
Okay.
Totally unrelated to the topic, but
Still interesting. What were we talking about?
we got. This has been an episode of tangents, but partly by design. I
Yes.
think. Yeah.
So we were talking about eating insects.
oh yeah, and so most of the world does it, and actually all the world does it.
Right.
Did you guys eat insects today?
Probably.
You absolutely
Yes.
did.
Go red dye, right? That's
I was going to ask.
Well, there's some of the dyes are made of insects. Yes.
Yeah.
Are you bringing up the thing where it's like there's a certain number of insect parts that are allowed in peanut butter? Or what?
You betcha.
Oh,
Okay,
right,
yeah,
right.
yeah.
There are FDA allowable amounts of insect parts.
So we
in all
probably
kinds
ate
of
a
food.
few insects
Yes.
today. In my coffee, there was some
we're
there's some
still
fly
here.
I
wings.
guaranteed you ate insect parts today and just didn't
Right.
know it. And the thing is, it's a small amount. Nobody's going to
Yeah,
notice.
yeah.
So we all do it, but most of the world does eat insects as some proportion of their diet.
On purpose, yeah.
And I've had some really delicious prepared insects in places like Chiapas and Mexico, where I got to eat these giant silk moth caterpillars in a dish they called sats. It's basically these caterpillars that are, about as thick as my thumb and twice as long.
Oh my gosh.
And it was neat watching them prepare it, take the guts out and all that,
Yeah.
and scrub it out, and then cook it up with some sauces, and it looks like dog shit. And they put it on a fresh taco, and oh man, does it taste good!
If it's in a taco, if I'm not looking at it, maybe I could get used to it. But
Yeah, no, God, it was so good.
And I know a lot of folks out there are probably horrified at this prospect of eating insects, but it goes back to shifting baseline syndrome.
Yeah.
If we can get future generations used to the idea, if you grew up your whole life doing this, you don't think twice about it.
I feel like I could see myself eating a fried up beer battered cricket. I don't know, something.
I'm sure people do it
something
now.
crispy. I don't.
All
something
deep fried
softer.
things taste the same.
Yeah, but something softer feels weird to me. I don't know why. It's not that I'm against soft things, but
Catfish, gator, conch, they all taste the same if they're deep fried.
Butter.
But,
In butter, yeah.
it's an attitude thing, absolutely. Like a lot of people won't think twice about eating shrimp or lobster. They're the bugs of the sea. What's the difference? They are acceptable insects to eat by some people. Oyster looks like snot, feels like snot, tastes delicious. A lot of us will eat that, no problem. And so it's an attitude. It's a snobbish Westerner thing. Where most of the non-Western world does eat insects, and some cultures a significant portion of their diet is insects.
So we'll meet back up when we have grandkids and see if we're eating insects.
Well, I can say my 2.5-year-old eats everything: sandbox, sand, boogers, whatever.
He's got a diverse palate.
Oh, my boy was trying to eat ants off the ground the other day. Just put his whole mouth on the ground to try to get the ant.
Oh, wow.
Kind of gross, yeah. Like, buddy, we don't want to put our mouth on the ground, you know.
My daughter tends to kiss insects rather than eat them.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, no, I trained her to do that after daycare taught her to not do that.
Oh, no.
I've unlearned her of various things. Well, I'll get to that. So beyond that, key thing is education. Nobody will care about insects if they don't hear about them. You know, we don't care about what we don't know about. So, like, as much as I ethically don't like zoos, they're very useful for getting people introduced to wildlife. So, on the end of it, it's maybe bad for the animals in the zoo, but for the species as a whole, there's a benefit there because people get interested in it then. Same thing with insect decline. People need to know about. People need to realize how diverse a little meadow, even on a cloudy, miserable day like it is today, where there's nothing flying, we still saw lots of insects down low in the vegetation here. So doing public outreach, so I do public moth nights, things like that bring people out there, and they're always amazed by the diversity, even on bad nights. Take people out and have them experience nature and try to shift attitudes. I mentioned my daughter going in daycare. She's been taught to fear spiders, and I've had to sort of untrain her that no, spiders are our friend, and this came to I had a very proud moment last weekend actually, when she had a play date with one of her friends, and her friend, who's very adventurous, was going down this really tall slide and then stopped halfway down and just started screaming. And I was like, oh, what's going on here? And her mom picked her up and whatnot, and she ran away, and it was just terrifying for her. And look, it's this tiny jumping spider.
Oh, jumping spiders are the cutest thing too.
Less, like half a centimeter in size, a little zebra jumping spider. And I'm like, Zyla, my daughter, Zyla, come over here, check out this jumping spider. Yeah. And she runs over, and we're looking at it, and we're playing with it, our hands, and like, watch, it's gonna jump, it might jump on your hands. And she's got her hand out. And then the girl who was terrified of the spider came over. And she stuck her hand out. And I was like, there's my victory. Yes.
Nice.
You know, is she not afraid of spiders anymore? Probably not, but I've opened the door.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
And so changing attitudes like that, not just for eating insects, but for loving insects without eating them.
Right.
Jumping spiders are a good gateway spider.
Oh, yeah. They're so cool. I used to play with them as a kid.
My son has a little, the peacock spider, you know, the one that has those weird appendages on their abdomen that fan out really flamboyantly. He has a stuffed animal of one of those. So he also has a harlequin shrimp as well. We got him a lot of weird stuffed animals. There's just one store that we like to go to find the weird ones. But
So I had a visiting researcher staying with me earlier this year, and as a gift to my daughter, he brought a finger puppet isopod. And so what, roly-polies, what are the other names?
Potato bugs.
Yeah.
Oh, God, I hate that name. But yeah, so it's a little crustaceans, and it's a finger puppet. And so she was fascinated by it. And so now every time we see isopod, she's very excited. She sleeps with it, and she knows that they like to sleep under logs and rocks, so she tucks it under her body when she goes to sleep. And it's great. It's like,
that's cute.
Yeah, perfect. I'm raising the weird kid.
We need more.
Yes, absolutely. And you know, things like iNaturalist, a great way to get into community sciences. BioBlitzes, very important. If you're interested, join them. If you've got expertise, join them to share your expertise.
What is a BioBlitz for people who don't know?
So BioBlitz is typically done over a 24-hour period, and it's over a given area, and basically everybody is there to identify as many species as they can over a 24-hour period. And so if I was part of a BioBlitz, I would be running a light to identify as many moths as I could. I'd be looking for leaf miners down in the vegetation, other insects and whatnot. There'd be mycologists looking for fungi. I've been parts of BioBlitzes where lichenologists were climbing to treetops to get lichens. In fact, I was part of a BioBlitz where we probably broke the world record for number of species in a BioBlitz. We cheated in that they sequenced the soil microbes. And so I forget how many thousands of soil microbe species we had, but you know, we get all these kinds of experts out there, and then all kinds of people that are curious that come out and learn from the experts and how to identify things, just learn about the sheer diversity out there in a small area.
Yes.
And so BioBlitzes are great fun.
Search for a BioBlitz near you.
This could be a future episode though, if we did obviously we're capable of a BioBlitz, but if we did a ride along with a much better group,
Yes.
and we were just there, you know, to do an episode, that would be really cool.
And then the final thing I've got for what you can practically do is vote. I'm not going to say for who, I'm not a citizen here, so I'm not going to make any further comments on that. But
we know how we know, because you said herbicide.
Oh, how do you say it?
Herbicide.
There's an H there, you know.
That's the name.
Hey, do you think you're never going to be a citizen?
I'm working on it.
But I mean, wait, are you from Canada?
Yes.
Yeah.
You might be a citizen. So.
You ever want to see a Canadian get angry?
No, but that was a funny, weird thing we went through. I don't know why that was.
That seems to have faded.
I know. I haven't heard any.
There's a lot of funny, weird things.
Yeah, there's a lot of funny, weird things that only come up for a little bit and then they disappear.
That's all I'll say about A1.
Yes.
Yeah.
So when you're voting, think about climate change, and also what you can do to fight climate change. Mm-hmm. There's all kinds of little things that we were mentioning earlier. And then the final thing I'll leave you with, and this might get you some hate mail.
Sweet.
Population growth. You know, right now, again, if all the people on Earth live to our lifestyle, it would take 4 Earths. The population is growing. It's not like we're going to magically get more land. Things will decline. If the land disappears, things will decline. It's going to get worse and worse and worse. We've got to do something.
Yes.
And there's various ways to sort of slow population growth. And population growth is slowing a bit, but it's not in places like sub-Saharan Africa.
Right.
And, you know, in the reading I've done on it, it seems like educating and empowering women is one of the best strategies for it. So maybe donate to literacy funds, education funds in poor countries. You know, that might be your best bang for your buck for, you know, helping the future population of Earth.
Talking about population growth can be a very ethically tricky thing, but you put the nail on the head in terms of looking at what has worked well was educating women.
Yes.
Especially poor women.
Yes.
So donate to those causes. We'll put some into the episode notes.
Yeah, not just educating, but empowering too.
Yes. Yes.
You know, and a lot of don't do what the Taliban's doing. Basically, I don't think Afghanistan's going in a good direction right now.
Right. And some of what's going on here too.
Well,
yeah, that's a whole other
no
can of
comment.
worms. So, I think as a good wrap up, the insect apocalypse, is it happening?
Probably.
Can you elaborate a little more?
If you talk to any entomologist that's actually looked at it, they will say yes.
Yes.
Do we have really solid data for a dramatic decline? Kind of. It's not as good as we'd like it. And if you think about it logically, we're taking biomass away from the land. We're taking, you know, agriculture is increasing, it's intensifying. We're losing habitat. Of course, insects are going to decline and everything else with it. So by default, it should be declining. It just seems to be declining more than we expected in places we didn't expect it.
Right. And it's complicated, right?
It's very complicated.
It depends on which species you're looking at, what areas you're looking at, but overall, declines are happening.
Absolutely. And if you want to be a contrarian, you could cherry pick a bunch of studies to show that insects are increasing.
Right.
You know, pick your right studies.
And those are super interesting to look at, like what's benefiting from the changes, you know, but that seems like a different question too, you know, like that could give you a view of what to expect in the future if nothing changes, right? But you got to look at the big picture too.
That's a really good point though, because you want to see which species are succeeding and why.
Right, yeah.
You know, so I'm actually on the committee of a grad student that's looking at different butterflies in North America and what she calls winners and losers, the ones that are declining, the ones that are increasing, and looking at the genomes of them to see, is there a characteristic in common with the winners versus the losers? You know, like is there something in their biology or in their genome that makes them a loser in our modern system?
A few years ago now, I went to a PhD dissertation defense where the guy was looking at, we actually know him, David, former TIFT director. David Spearing, right? The specific thing he was looking at was novel ecotypes. Do you know if this is right? Novel ecotypes. But he was looking at these like old fields throughout the city of Buffalo, and he knew when each of them was developed or whatever. So he had like a timeline of, oh, this is what happens after 20 years. This is what happens after 40. This is what happens after 10. And he looked at just the species makeup, and he looked at a lot of different things about those areas. And it was sort of, you know, the research was interesting. This is literally what's happening now. These are the new environments that we're creating, totally man-made, and like what happens over time after they're kind of reclaimed by nature. Kind of a fascinating type of thing to study. You know,
it absolutely is. And for the people that look at the systems like that over a time period, you can look at the forest we're in and sort of read into the history. So I can see a bunch of red pine here, which were probably planted, but I know that this was an open area, 30 years ago, maybe 40 years ago. So that's also very, very important stuff, and extrapolating to the future as well with climate change and all that fun stuff. But I think the ultimate thing is, as entomologists, we need to hold ourselves to a high standard and don't just look at the negatives. It is harder to get a positive study or a neutral study published, but that does need to be published. We do need to document where there is no pattern or the insects are benefiting. And then from the general public perspective, don't despair. There are things that you can do and to help the situation out. Just we have to realize that it's actually happening.
And you've given our audience a lot of things that they can do. So thank you so much for giving your time and suggesting that we come out here today. It was great to hear from you, and we will always jump at the chance to head out in the field with you. So
it was great chatting with you guys.
Yeah. All right. I got to say, earlier in this episode, I called Bill an insect of a man, and I was trying to insult him as a person. But after all this, having thought about it a little bit longer, actually, I think it was I was praising you by calling you an insect of a man.
I thought you were going to say he was in decline.
And you're in decline. I hate to say it.
It's all true.
You're in decline, but it was also, I was praising you. So, for all the work you do.
We hope you enjoyed this one. Steve and I will do a wrap-up a little later on. Mm-hmm. And I think now we need to take Jason out for a meal.
Yeah, I think so.
Sound good?
Let's make some insects.
Yeah.
All right, folks. Thanks.
Bye.
All right, folks, we hope you enjoyed that one. I am here again with Violet instead of Steve. And before our official wrap-up, we'd like to, as promised, give a shout-out to one of our listeners, Maureen, who's a teacher from sunny California. She sent us a wonderful email full of compliments and ideas, and she wrote us back in June. In an email, she said, I just wanted to say that I'm thoroughly enjoying your podcast. I'm a third-grade teacher in Northern California and just found your work last week, just in time for summer break for me. I've already filled several pages of my notebook with information that I either learned while listening or learned after hearing something you two said that I found interesting enough to look up. I tutor a few days a week during summer, which leaves me plenty of time to back up to the beginning and make my way through all of your episodes. And she started with the Dawn Chorus episode, it looks like. I'm sure Steve would love hearing about all this. And Maureen, she went on to say how we turned her on to Bern Heinrich, and she also recommended that I should maybe involve some of my students in my podcast. What do you think about that?
I don't know about that.
Maybe. And then also we should take a field trip out to California. She even provided a list of things we could cover.
That we should do.
You'd want to come too?
Yeah.
You could hold the mic.
Okay.
Maureen wrote, we have weird and awful bugs like the glassy-winged sharpshooter.
Ew.
And she said, visit Napa Valley and see how the pretentious ones live. And there was another part of the email where she wrote, California sea otters are the poster children for keystone cuteness and are saving the world one kelp bed at a time. And I just loved that phrase, keystone cuteness. I'm going to use that. She wrapped up by saying, anyway, thanks so much for your work and sharing all the information. I hope you continue. And please keep telling all the Latin names, even if they are hard to pronounce. So, Maureen, thank you so much. Steve and I appreciate you taking the time to write, and we will continue, I promise, to include the Latin names, and I'm sure we will continue to mispronounce them as well. All right, time for the official wrap-up. First and foremost, we'd like to thank our growing list of Patreon supporters. So thank you to our new patron, Jeremy M., and patron Roy B. for signing back up. We also like to give a special shout-out each month to our top patrons, so stick around for the end of the episode to hear Violet share that list.
And I will, too. And if you'd like to support the podcast, consider becoming a patron of our show at patreon.com. As a patron, you'll get access to our special patrons-only version of our episodes that include Bill sharing the episode notes. Because of support from our listeners, we are able to keep the show free and make cooler episodes like this one. You can make a one-time donation through PayPal on our website, or help out by sharing the podcast with friends and family and by subscribing and leaving us a review wherever you get your podcasts. It helps spread the word and allows us to reach a wider audience.
Come enjoy our sporadic posts on Facebook, Instagram, and Blue Sky, and you can always email us ideas for episode topics, criticisms, or your stories of personal encounters with chowing down on bugs to thefieldguides@gmail.com. And parents, remember to get those kids outside, let them get muddy and dirty and flip over rocks and logs. And if you don't have kids, make some time to get yourself outside. And here's Violet to share this episode's top patrons.
This is a big one. Eric, Alyssa, Adam, Mary, Colin G, Dr. Judy, Kimberly B, Peter R, Callie, Rich K, the Hebranks, Orange Julianne, Rachel L., the drunk phytologist, Daniel M., Diane, we named the dog Indy, Hot Dog Cold Weather, Dwayne H., Jennifer D., Jonathan A., Michaela, Val, Andy W., Elizabeth P., Picasso 3, John R., Evan, Mark T., Cecilia, Julie B., Dennis, Chris N., Sung, Jeff S., Jonathan K., Matt E., Plants in My Pants, Ryan R., Sophie S., Connor H., Measure and Principle, Fragaria pepaloinoidea, Outside Chronicles, Andrew C., Quixote, Max D., Melissa Marie in Dusty, Arizona, Kelly S., Sarah S., Helen A., Judy F., Ben C., Jane H., Doodle Dude 82, Gal and Mac, Kazis, Jeff S., Esther C., John W., Mark V., Bethany H., Rob M., Holly M., Catherine W., and Virginia.
Nice job.
Thank you.
On behalf of Steve patrons, thank you so much for your support. As always, it means the world to us, and we will continue to try to produce episodes that are worthy of your support. And we'll see you next time.
Goodbye.
I'm going to pull up the actual number here again.
All right.
Cue the elevator music.
We'll cut that.
We'll add the elevator music. The opposite of what Bill said.